Welcome back, Louis.
Oh, thanks. Nice to be back.
You sent me down a rabbit hole last night, my friend. I watched a lot of stuff.
And I spent 3 years down that rabbit hole, and there's a lot on YouTube, but there's various very, very well-resourced websites. I mean, I know there's a lot to talk about, but perhaps the biggest obstacle to making a documentary is the overabundance of material. Because there's just so many ways to come in on it, and you can just chase intriguing leads.
He made up more shit. He wrote down more things that never happened than anyone who's ever lived.
A lonely guy who was also a narcissist.
I don't think he wrote a second draft ever.
No, he didn't have time. He was just chanting it out. But, the guy was he lied about so many things. He was also abusive to his wives. In the inner circle, it is extremely demanding and I would argue abusive and cult-like. On the outer circles, as you get further from the center, I think it can be relatively benign, and especially if you're a VIP or a celebrity in which you're exposed only to the best sorts of treatment. You're given kind of platinum card treatment. They roll out the red carpet for you, and I think those people feel immensely indebted. But to be fair, they didn't know that was the job they were going in for.
Right, to be fair, yeah, that's true.
So they just thought they were up for some gig. I mean, you know what I mean? Maybe a sitcom or something.
Essentially they were. I mean,
which is the same as journalists, oddly enough, but it's very, very low. Basically, you are a kind of broken, deceitful, devious character.
Journalists are 1.1 of the tone.
Same as perverts. But and actually, I think quite explicit. I mean, I could go down, and that explains a lot about why it's so hard to make a documentary. In practical terms, why they don't cooperate with documentaries. They just see you as a pervert. Someone who's dedicated to the abasement of humanity, in essence. Someone who's holding humanity back from being what it should be.
The very people that we rely upon to investigate the truth and express that truth, disseminate that truth to the general public, those people are perverts.
And that's scripture as well. You know what I mean? So it's not like you can argue against it in their I mean, one of the big things they're up against is any attempt. Most kind of malfunctioning regimes, whether it's a corporate entity or something else, you say this isn't working, let's try something else. Something could be working extremely badly, and nothing can be changed. But it's like turning an aircraft carrier around. If it comes from, basically, if it's gospel, then how do you reform? God's changed his mind is basically what you have to say.
So when someone comes along and they have this rigid ideology where things are very clearly defined, you must ask, who is defining these things? Who is this person that is beyond reproach? Those people sent me pamphlets and paperwork and invitations to seminars and this thing and that thing. I mean, it just never ended. It was like weekly, monthly, constant. They're very, very relentless in their pursuit. By creating these rigid ideologies is they make things so that you don't have to question stuff, and that gives some people comfort. If you know that these are the rules and you don't have to think about it or why, fill in the blank, whatever the issue is. When someone defines something like that for you, it makes it so you have less questions and you have comfort in these truths, air quotes. But that's not good for anybody. It's bad for everyone involved because there are some things that I think we've all learned. Be nice to people and it feels better to them, feels better to you. You have a healthier existence when you have harmony with your neighbors, and when you can create a good community of people that are being harmonious together and friendly together, it's a really nice place to live. That's pretty much a universal truth. Whenever you have someone who wrote down a bunch of wacky shit like this, and then you have seemingly intelligent people defending it.
It's one of the reasons that I think it appeals a lot to actors, because it works, I think, for people who have any sort of insecurity or who are going into situations of uncertainty, and it allows you to almost reprogram your circuits in some way and be okay about using assertive body language and speech. And it also imparts the sense that you have all the truths necessary to save humanity from itself, and it is your obligation to ensure that those truths are saved for posterity and communicated as widely as possible in a totally unadulterated fashion, because any adulteration of the message means that not only do they not work, they become toxic and dangerous. The trouble with the independent movement is it turns out that if you remove the rather predatory and the sort of fundamentalist controlling side, you get something a bit wishy-washy it sort of loses its potency. It's almost that the authoritarian dimension in which it demands total obedience from its followers is intrinsic to its ability to have an effect. You get in knee-deep and then you think, well, I've come in this far, so even though I've got doubts, I'll go a little further. And then you sort of reach a tipping point of commitment where it becomes almost embarrassing to back out. Your family is annoyed with you. A lot of them you don't see. It's very hard to walk away from that commitment. Do you know what I mean? And it feels very. You're sort of swept up in this narrative of we're in a place where there's adventure and a certain sense of order and actually there's a sort of seductive quality to it.
Is to eliminate the power of the individual by making you feel diminished by the sheer scale of what you're seeing and what the hall that you're in.
I'm sure that's
It's
correct.
intimidating.
Very much so. It's very hard to kind of leverage your way out.
Well, it's very difficult when they say that, like, by what authority? And you realize, well, you don't have any, and they think they do.
Yeah.
And that's where it gets weird. It's very Orwellian. It's like safety and trusted. They are allowed to violate pretty much all of their principles and just go after you. You are the enemy.
Yes.
And there's a whole different set of rules for engaging with someone who's an SP.
An SP, suppressive person. Yeah.
I like how they do that. That's what they do in the military too, by the way. IEDs. They abbreviate things.
Acronyms. They're constantly using abbreviations that are more or less unintelligible to the outsider. Which, by the way, is a lot of how, allegedly, according to experts on thought reform or cults, so-called, they say that by learning a new language, it's part of what kind of gets you caught up in the thought patterns of an abusive system. It kind of casts the world in us and them terms, which is very characteristic of a lot of systems of thought that are inimical to sort of freedom or free way of thinking. It's us and them. And that whole idea, like, if you're not part of the solution, then you're part of the problem.
Yeah.
It's a very dangerous, slippery road to go down, because you're then, by definition, saying there's good guys and bad guys, and if you're not on my team, you're a bad guy. And one of the things they find offensive is to reveal some of the secret truths that are unveiled. So you don't, day one, get told. There's no kind of catch or later sort of amendment that gets made when you're a year, 2 years, 3 years down the line. You learn more as you go up. Some say that this is partly something that it owes to Crowley, or Alistair Crowley, I think it's pronounced. Mm-hmm. I'm going to learn more as I go on, a kind of unraveling mystery. And when you get to the OT levels, which is once you've gone clear, going clear was originally the best thing you could do, and then subsequently he added more levels and more layers, and you get to the OT, and there's 8 published OT levels, and OT3, various secrets are revealed. And allegedly, if an uninitiated OT or an uninitiated person is shown the secrets, it makes them go crazy. But one of the things that, you're not going to be able to say, like, you know what, I didn't ever do anything. I have a right to know my truth and express my truth. I don't want to mock you. I don't want to make, you have a right to believe what you want to believe. And if you think, no more than I'd force a Jewish guy to eat pork or tell a Rastafarian to cut his hair. And so I'm not going to say to an OT, I know what happens at OT3, and it sounds like a bunch of junk. Like, he's guided into a room, and literally, it's almost like they take it out of a safety deposit box and kind of open it up with kind of white gloved hands, and then there's a handwritten kind of piece of parchment inside that room, and then the guy has a kind of little routine he follows, like the person who brought you in comes in and says, has it been read and comprehended, or something like that, right? And then you've read it and you go like, yes. I mean, all that secret squirrel stuff is very appealing.
Secret squirrel. Yeah, I forgot about Secret Squirrel.
They've kind of created a marketing juggernaut that is, if not immune to, but at least highly resistant to any attempt to discredit or undermine. So I read it will be the fact that we now have searchable data. But it shows no signs of coming apart. That the numbers may not be high, but the amounts of revenue coming in are huge from what I can tell. And I get the feeling that, you just have to see how, the amount that they're able to spend on advertising, the number of new buildings that go up. So however small it may be, it has a huge punching power.
Where are they getting the money from?
It's an interesting point. The first thing is that it's structured almost like a McDonald's.
The government essentially caved under the threat of massive amounts of lawsuits.
Yes, yeah, they were just found a way to pressure individual employees to the point where their lives have become extremely hard.
It's amazing that that's upheld.
I know. Just thought the orientation video is so funny. It's one of this it's this video where they say, he goes, if at the end of this video you decide this is not for you, that's fine. You're welcome to leave, just as you're free to jump off, throw yourself off a bridge or blow your brains out. And so it's this very over-the-top kind of thing. It's just ludicrous. I love that. This is like catnip to me explaining this stuff.
Is it?
Yeah, kind of. It's like I said, I was steeped in it for 3 years. Yeah, man, you didn't spend very long down the rabbit hole.
Well, my rabbit hole was not limited. I try to avoid any rabbit hole that involves celebrities.
If you get celebrities in,
yes,
then you've got a kind of golden ticket to reaching the masses. You got the impression that they would 100% kind of take your money. I think if they knew you were a celebrity, if they thought you were, they would really that you would get special treatment. Instead of being taken for and given bed care in a facility, she was taken from a hospital and more or less sequestered in a hotel for a week or maybe longer and died.
What was her cause of death?
I believe it was dehydration. We should double check on that.
Wow, that's a rough way to go.
Yeah. And, there was a whole script for dealing with, but I don't think it was, medically supported. It was basically involved ignoring them and keeping them secluded, kind of locking them in a room. He's an unaccountable leader, and there are many allegations of him being physically abusive towards his followers. But he also cops to the fact that he was involved in all kinds of devious, covert activity involving private investigators, destruction of documents, and also a certain amount of physical violence himself, which he, has apologized for. And so it becomes a sort of examination of him and his ability to, the fact that he's been seduced by this thing, and it's still in certain ways, it's still in him. You take a vow of poverty, you volunteer, you
Take a vow of poverty.
Yeah, you get paid like below minimum wage, tiny amounts. You're leading a kind of Spartan existence to save the planet. You sign a contract for 40 billion years or something. I think it is literally. But I think a lot of that is to do with. Someone explained this to me. One of the rules about a non-profit, they cannot hoard their income. Like money that comes in has to be spent, otherwise they're in violation of their charitable status. So someone just told me this the other day. So in other words, they have to kind of keep buying buildings because there needs to be a cash outflow. Which sort of makes sense, right?
Yeah, that's totally understandable. Yeah, that makes sense. Wow.
And I'll say this about him. If you're in it and you're up at the top echelons as he was, you are on some kind of crazy sci-fi adventure, if you think about it.
But for the most part, most people are vaccinated to prevent against diseases. If we came up with some sort of a vaccination to prevent the more disgusting aspects of human beings, negative behavior, aggression, meanness, it'd be very curious as to how that would play out, whether or not that would diminish ambition and progress, but who knows?
Yes, and I think the danger of it is it would bear certain similarities to a sort of almost fascist vision, I think. I think that there is an overlap there. The cult of health, the cult of glowing, smiling beacons of health and humanity marching up and down. And actually, it's our ability to rub along with difficult characters and to sort of embrace the ugly side is, I can't define exactly what it is, but it feels like that's an important dimension of life.
So there's no way to defend that, right?
Correct.
I think everyone agrees with that.
We agree with that.
But does that make the cartoons good? It certainly doesn't.
No.
They could be shit cartoons and people are killed for shit cartoons. It's wrong to kill people for shit cartoons. But the cartoons are still shit.